1,400 acres of incredibility. Its own zip code, its own water tower, purified. It's a green campus. It is amazing. The food was over the top. Over the top. So, with that being said, I'm going to get into my talk. So you see, we're all still like, half of us are still in this incredible energy that we just left. So, with that being said, we are made in the image and the likeness of the divine. And that means that each and every one of us contains all of the attributes necessary to create a life celebrating our own divinity. One of those attributes is most certainly the ability to create. And the fact is that these spiritual truths that we practice here and that are everywhere and have been talked about since the beginning of time, we are creating. We are using them either by design or by default. So they're always working. The question is, though, are we intentionally or unintentionally creating? These are important things for us to know as empowered beings, which is what we are. Are we creating by that design, or are we creating by default? When we are intentionally creating, we are then creating by design. We are consciously creating. We're aware. We're aware. We're going to get into that today. We are happiest when we are consciously creating because we're aligned with the source of all life. We're aligned with the divine, and the divine is joy, is good. There is nothing to oppose that. And this process of creation and the progress in creation are what brings us the most joy. So a question of the month is, where are you on your joy meter? Something for us to notice, only you know. If it isn't as high as you would like it to be, then you might want to look at how you're doing with the process and progress of intentional creation. So I have a scenario for you. We're tooling along, feeling like you're really living life on purpose, on point, in a powerful process of creation, and you're making great strides and great leaps. You're just moving on. You got it all going. And you're staying tuned in to that, if you remember, Potential FM radio station. Talked about that 2 weeks ago. And you're remembering to turn that dial up and away from that gloomy FM and reality FM to that potential FM. So again, you're tooling along and you're feeling like you are really living life on purpose, on point, in a powerful process of creation, making things happen. They're just like flowing. You are so aligned. Life is good. Life is great. Everything is flowing. You ever feel like that? Mm-hmm. You ever get into one of those states? Mm-hmm. It's all coming together. It's making sense. I'm ready. You're on top of the world. Do anything. Yes. And then wham! Out of nowhere, something happens, big or subtle, that throws you back into this place of, wow, what happened here? What happened here? It's like it throws you back like it's hitting you like a baseball field worth of distance. You just like get pushed back. Anyone ever feel like that? Mm-hmm. What do you do then? Lots of times we tend to shrink within ourselves. We tend to shrink. We just go within, not a meditative way, but in a fear-based way. Whatever it was that we were going for fades away. We're going to stay in this place where we're shrunk into that feels familiar. It feels safe in a way. And our excitement about Potential FM is really tuned down. And we say to ourselves, let's just stay here. It's okay to stay here. We might not even realize what we've done, because most of us live, not us, but other people, live their lives unconsciously, not knowing that there is always choice. There's always a way of living life consciously. And our joy meter drops. It drops a couple of degrees. That sound familiar? No? Okay. It only happens to me. What if, just what if, you were not meant to shrink in? That's not the divine alignment way of living life, to go back to the status quo of what was, where you were not maybe fulfilled. What if you weren't meant to stay in that place? And what if it were true that life is an ever-ascending spiral upwards?
Yes.
Which it is. It truly is. The divine is always ascending and creating, always in a spiral. If you notice, well, you might not notice because it's kind of invisible unless under a microscope, right? The ever-ascending spirals of nature, of every form of life. We were not meant to shrink. That's not our natural place. We're not meant to stay where we are if it's not that place of spiraling upwards, because life is that ever-ascending spiral. And you came here, all of us came here to be stretched, to be really pulled out, to be engaged in this divinely inspired process of creation. The divine, God, creates. That is the only activity of divinity, is to create and create. And so since we're made in the image and likeness, which means we're made of God stuff, that's the truth, that's our way of really being in alignment with our true nature, is to create. And we create our lives. We create our lives in many different ways. And it's to make this whole progress and process in creation align with the great joy that is there. It's always present. Doesn't always feel that way, but it is that way. And that's for us to know. It's the truth of our being. So what stopped you in your tracks? It is something that can be very, very sneaky, and it wears many disguises. So what is this sneaky disguised thing that stops us in our tracks? When we experience excitement, enthusiasm for our potential, we all have potential, in case you didn't realize that. We all have potential, passion. When we really express this, when we are in the process and progress of intentional creation. Our joy meter climbs way up when we are. And as I've said that already, but when it hits an invisible subconscious limit or ceiling, that's when those sabotaging behaviors can set in. Gay Hendricks speaks about this in his great book, The Big Leap. He calls it our upper limit. The unconscious ceiling that we put on our ability to truly be in that juicy place of intentional creation. In our human experience, each of us has, this is interesting, each of us has this built-in limit for how much happiness we can tolerate. Just as we have a limit for how much pain we're willing to put up with, we also have that for happiness. And it sounds entirely crazy, but it's true. And Hendricks refers to it as our upper limit problems, or ULP. So I think it is influential and important to look at that, and I'm going to call it the great upper limit problem, or GULP, because that makes more sense. So GULP, because that's what it feels like. It feels like, right? That's a gulp. We gulp. Like, The idea behind our gulps is that we all have this learned, it's not the truth, learned limit to the amount of love, appreciation, success, joy, peace, and power and plenty that we experience. And it's our divine birthright to experience it. And when we let it alone, we can actually, when we are left alone, as you see this in children, young children, before they learn, they're full of joy. They're full of expressing that which they came in with. That's why we know it's a birthright. It is a birthright, a divine birthright. But we learned somewhere along the way, when we were becoming these conscious adults, that it doesn't matter when or how. You don't have to figure out when it took place. Just know that it took place. And it only matters what we do with it now. Until we can consciously rise above it, we will always be held down by this invisible subconscious ceiling of our upper limit. Holmes tells us at page 302 in the Science of Mind book that we must rise superior to the world in order to create a new pattern. Rise superior to the world. If those old patterns aren't what you want them to be, it's time to create a new one. And the news is, you can do that. And until we learn to rise above the gulp, it will dampen our ability to be in the process to and make progress in our creating of that life of joy that we all would like to feel, to be happy. That's why we love that song, Be Happy. It makes us all feel good. And that's really what we want to do. We want to feel good. So the first step in rising above, rising above the gulps is being aware of them. Noticing the triggers, because there's always a trigger. But we have to become aware of what that trigger is. Acutely aware. And realize the metaphysics of things, which is above the physical. It's beyond anything that we can put in the physical. There's much more going on that meets the eye. In fact, all that world, that realm of limitless potential and possibility lies in the invisible. You can't see it. But the effects of it are what you experience in life. And realizing that behind that trigger is a consciousness that we bring to it. Consciousness. Consciousness is what we think, what we feel, what we say, our values, our attitudes, our words, our attitudes, our reaction. That all makes up that word, consciousness, that we use all the time. Our consciousness sets our goals. So the triggers are all about being aware of our consciousness and what it is that stops us from fully expressing the great joy that we are meant to experience. And red flags will go up. You will know it when you become aware that you have hit your upper limit. You have a gulp, a big old gulp. So again, the first step to rising above our gulps, or said in another way, the first step in raising our ceiling for joy. Raising our ceiling for joy, for love, for success, is to be aware of what the triggers are. What is it? We've been operating, we gotta remember this, we've been operating under our gulps for a while. And they have become habitual. We don't even know they're happening. So we will need to pay attention to what is going on and put two and two together in a way that we might not have done before. And that's why it's empowering, because the power to create is within us. It is nowhere else. Dorothy was told that in The Wizard of Oz. It's been there all the time. It's been there all the time, this power. We are being made aware of it through these teachings. And I want to give you a collection of triggers and see if you can relate to any of these. And this is a congregation participation part. As you hear these different scenarios, ask yourself if you have felt that gulp during any of those gulps during this, during any of these, okay? I want you to say out loud. Say, everybody say go.
Go.
Okay, we're practicing this one. So here are some common triggers. See if any of these resonate with you. As you begin to move forward on a creative endeavor that stretches your boundaries, well, I've never been here before, but it's stretching, subtle or not so subtle, limiting internal and external self-talk creeps in, that wonderful self-talk. And you listen and believe it. Lots of gulps on that one. As you contemplate moving to the green growing edge of becoming, that's a 16th century mystic that wrote that, or perhaps you have moved to the edge. You're right there into that newness, and suddenly, for no explicit reason, you start to feel down, maybe even a low-level depression, or even have a painful, hurtful memory come up. That could totally cause that trigger in your pain body. So your pain body is triggered, and we know what that does. Anyone could relate? Some gulps. Want to hear those gulps? Because we want them to dissipate. You have an exciting project before you. You are jazzed, you are pumped, you are psyched, you know you got this. And you're feeling really good. But then you find it difficult to focus. You're easily distracted by something else. Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter, down that, whatever it is, down that internet rabbit hole. Go. And it sucks the whole thing right out of you. Boom. You are on purpose. This is you're on purpose. You've planned your work. You now are ready to do the work. It's all planned. And boom, a situation arises around that which you seem that's simply outside of your control, but it takes over your energy and your attention and takes it away from whatever it was you really wanted to focus on. You're about to take the big leap, and physical pain occurs that literally stops you in your tracks. I'll have to gulp on that one, although it didn't keep me very, very stuck because I pushed through it. But it takes a lot of energy, and it can limit what you really want to do in life. And I've heard some gulps, quite a few in fact. So this is like really something to become aware of, something that we really need to become aware of. And we must be on the lookout of those often subtle ways of that upper limit. Think of a glass ceiling. It's a glass ceiling kind of feeling with our joy meter, with our happiness. But we have a two-pronged approach. So, first, Holmes tells us, and this is at page 39 of the Science of Mind book, we must instill into the mind the fundamental proposition that good is without bounds. Only good and loving kindness shall follow me all the days of my life. Then, let us begin to accept today more good than we experienced yesterday, and to know that we shall reap a harvest of fulfilled desires. No matter what's going on in the world, in our lives, we can either rise above it or be sucked into it. I mean, that is our choice. That is, we can always take inspired actions all of the time. And I say that a lot because I really feel like inspiration in any kind of form, whether it be political, because be a spiritual warrior, be a spiritual activist, follow where you look up, but always do it from that place of peace. Don't get sucked into the fear that's being propagated throughout our news and our media. Don't get sucked into it. But there's a way to instill what Holmes was talking about into our minds. And we're going to call this one a gulp-busting mantra. This is the mantra. I expand in abundance, success, and love every day, and I inspire those around me to do the same. And we're going to say it together, so you're going to repeat this after me. I expand in abundance, success, and love every day.
I expand in abundance, success, and love every day.
And I inspire those around me to do the same.
And I inspire those around me to do the same.
Strong affirmation. A strong affirmation. Over, and mantra is something repeated over and over and over again to get us through that ceiling, to break through, because it's only in our limited belief system. It's not the actual reality of who and what we are. How simple, yet how profound. The mantra is like an antidote to years of conditioning. All those years of believing that same limiting thought. That program that convinced you that you don't deserve or you can't. You don't deserve, you can't have an abundant amount of love. Yes, you can. That's absolutely false, and it's a belief. It's not true. Appreciation, success, peace, all kinds of good in our lives. Yes, we can. We hear the opposite all the time, which keeps us in that state of fear, of limitation, of low-level depression. It keeps us stuck there. And it's time for us to know that we can shift. We can take some inspired action. I expand in abundance, success, and love every day. And I inspire those around me to do the same. Love it. Love, love, love it. So, moving forward. The second prong. So the first prong is a strong mantra. And I like that one a lot. But there's the second prong to this. And that is to let go. So it's going to come to that. Always is. Let go of the resistance to the what is. And to whatever the trigger is. To whatever our gulp has created for us to believe. Let go of it. Sounds easy. Because it is our life. It is our current experience, and resistance is futile. That's an old belief. When we let go of the resistance and then surrender to who and whose we are, and we invite, when we use those mantras, a pop-through moment. A moment when we pop through that upper limit and we raise our ceiling. We raise our ceiling. I can remember, oh my God, so many different times, and I know that you can, of when you were so much like lower, if you will, and maybe where you are today, never even imagining what 5, 10, even 1 minute, but usually it's some kind of time frame. I never thought I'd be running a spiritual center in my whole life until that calling came and kicked my butt right out of my comfort zone into it. And I just did it. I didn't have any idea what I was doing. But I thought, well, God has the idea, so I'll let God direct this. It's those kinds of moments of stretching, and it's continuous. It's not like you reach somewhere and I'm there. You are not there. Because there's always more. There's always more. More good, more experiences to translate into the lesson to lead us to greater good. I love these words of New Thought minister and author Dennis Merritt Jones. In his book, The Art of Being. It's a little lengthy, but I want you to hear it. Life is like the ocean, isn't it? He writes. Every day brings with it waves, which challenges, and swells, fear, that seem to have so much power. And if we allow them to, they will intimidate us and keep us sidelined on the beach. However, if we want to have a fully expressed life, we are going to have to get out and wade into the surf. Yes, from time to time, we all have those waves that simply seem to overwhelm us. Those are the ones we need to be willing to be lifted up by, not dragged under by. This can be difficult to do if we think we can control the waves. The key is to understand that we will never be able to control the waves of life. But surely we can learn how to surf. Kind of like going with it. It's about knowing how and when to let the waves lift us and carry us. It's about surrender in the moment and trusting that divine intelligence within each of us knows what it is doing. If we are truly open to that, each wave we encounter in life will contribute to making us master surfers. Masters at letting go and letting God. And as they say in Malibu, life's a beach and the surf is up. So jump on it and enjoy the ride. Something to remember, that metaphor of the wave. You know, riding the wave or fighting the wave. The wave's gonna come no matter what. And that is my invitation to each of us this morning, to jump on with your process of intentional creation and enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride. You're on it anyway. You might as well enjoy it. And if it's not bringing you joy, then think of a different way to respond to whatever those waves of life come into your way of being or knock you a football field, whatever they are. You can choose what to do with it. You don't have to let the situation control you. And that whenever you encounter a gulp, recognize it for what it is. Apply your gulf-busting mantra to it. Make sure you have one. Those affirmations have gotten me through so many seeming crises in life, and have shifted and kept me pretty centered while going through it. Breathe into it and keep into that ever-ascending spiral of life. And it's because it's of growth and expansion. And I want you to hear this, to really, really hear this. It is your divine right and divine destiny to raise your upper limit. It is your divine right and your divine destiny to be engaged in the process and progress of creation. It is your divine right and divine destiny to live a life of joy. You deserve to live there. And the world needs you, desperately needs you to live there. Let us anchor together, and you may close your eyes if you like and take a deep breath. And I'm going to repeat this for you. It is my divine right and my divine destiny to raise my upper limit. Daily I expand in abundance, success, and love as I inspire those around me to do the same. It is my divine right and divine destiny to be engaged in the process and progress of creation. It is my divine right and divine destiny to live a life of joy. I deserve to live there, and the world needs me to live there. Take a breath. Just soak that into your consciousness. Just bust those upper limits with those mantras and live the life that the divine intended us to live, to stay focused through all of the ups and downs and waves and swells of life, and to live that life of joy. So it is.
So it is.